It's very broad brush, and in those broad brushes, Kerry came across as calm, determined, presidential, and Bush was edgy and testy.
You remember last week I said to you there have been some studies about that, the sound off, the same person wins as with the sound on, and this was a perfect example of that. What George Bush said was fine. It's how he looked, it was the reaction shots, he was the Al Gore of this debate.
So aside from the petulance, this would have been a draw?
I'm not so sure. The president seems to be saying there is one issue this year. It is the war. And if you criticize my conduct of it, you're demoralizing the troops, so be quiet on the great issue of the war. That really won't last for the next 30 days. The president asks a good question. He says, how can a man who says this is the wrong war, wrong place, wrong time, how can he win the war? Senator Kerry asks a good question. How can a man solve a problem he won't see? Which is what the president is essentially saying when he says things are going swimmingly in Iraq.
And I think it's deeper than that, and I think to Kerry's advantage, which is this is the first time in the debate that Kerry has Bush on the defensive on Iraq, which is surprising given the reality in Iraq. But suddenly, for the first time, we are debating George Bush's position on Iraq. For the last 6 months, we've been debating John Kerry's various positions.
Except that the Bush team is doing everything they can coming out of the debate to turn that around. President Bush 2 days in a row said that basically Senator Kerry made 3 big mistakes in the debate, David Brooks. He talked about this mistake contradiction. He says that Senator Kerry wants a global test for action. And they seem to be taking aim at this idea that Senator Kerry had that his vote against the $87 billion was a protest vote. I think that's a huge gaffe.
Yeah, I think those are 3 mistakes. I'd say one made one more, which is say the war on terror is a war against Al-Qaeda, when I think Bush is right and the 9/11 Commission is right that it's a broader war. Nonetheless, let's not get too policy heavy here.
Right.
This show is about policy. That debate with 65 million viewers is about character. People are fuzzy on policy. People are really good at reading character. And somehow, John Kerry, a man who made no friends in 20 years in the Senate, came across as a friendlier guy than George Bush.
A couple of things. First of all, the format worked to his advantage because he had to talk short, an unnatural act for a member of the United States Senate, and he did it, and he was therefore much more effective. But secondly, he has now established, and this to me is the important thing, a threshold. It's not winning that debate. It's getting to a certain point on Iraq and foreign policy where he's now okay, and now he moves on to Democratic
I think that's a very key point. Forget about the horse race numbers in these polls, because who knows whether they're reliable or not. But one thing that's consistently shown throughout all the polls that have been taken since Thursday is that Senator Kerry helped himself on likability, on strength, on whether he's a qualified commander-in-chief. And this is so important for him, George Will, because the president's team was really hoping by having national security come first, they could deliver a knockout blow on those questions.
Because a knockout blow would have devalued the next debate, which is not on his home territory, which is foreign policy. Now, what they've done is they've said, gosh, we better tune into this next debate instead of watching whatever we could have watched, because this is on a different subject, and we want to see not the subject, not the policy, but we want to see if the president recovers. Now, that's not the point you want to have in the voters' minds 20, whatever it'll be, 6 days before the election.
One other point, which is the morale of the Democratic Party, which has just been transformed in the past few days. It was as if you'd see, not to traipse on George's turf, but see the number 9 hitter coming up in a crucial situation. He's been batting .220 all year with no home runs, and he hits a home run for you. Suddenly you think history's on your side. And I think a lot of Democrats really had lost some confidence in John Kerry, and now they've got it back.
That's right. And as Cokie pointed out, the next 2 debates are likely to move towards domestic issues.